Dating in the Middle Ages, was it a romantic aspiration wrapped in verse and longing glances, or simply a transaction of power and property? Within the backdrop of Gothic cathedrals, rampant plagues, and a society deeply enmeshed in religious dogma and rigid social hierarchy, the concept of love as we know it today was a complex tapestry woven with threads of political ambition and economic need. This segment delves into one of the most intriguing aspects of medieval life, the concept of courtly love. Before you settle in, take a second to like and subscribe only if this kind of storytelling speaks to you. And while you're here, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing how far these whispers travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe switch on a fan for that soft hum. And let's drift into tonight's journey together. Picture, if you will, a troubadour strumming a lute beneath a moonlit window, singing verses in praise of an unattainable lady. This was not just an artistic expression, it was the manifestation of courtly love, a peculiar blend of adulation and idealized romance that found its roots in the courts of European nobility. Unlike today, where memes often playfully distill modern romance into shareable snippets, courtly love was a prescribed and structured pursuit, existing almost entirely in the mind and soul, rather than being a physical reality. In these songs, passion was elevated to an art form, a socially accepted outlet, where real human emotion could be exhibited within the carefully drawn lines of courtly etiquette. Yet, this emotion rarely intersected with the practicalities of marriage, which was more a familial negotiation than an individual decision. Think of it as a dramatic tableau where love was often spectated but rarely consummated. In stark contrast, marriages were arranged deals, often sealed years before the young bride and groom could even pretend to comprehend their implications. These agreements secured alliances between noble families and neatly tied up parcels of land and titles. The concept of marrying for love was as illogical to medieval sensibilities as relinquishing a crown for the fleeting joys of camaraderie over spirited discourse. But what about those who lived outside the isolated bubbles of nobility, the peasants and common folk? Astonishingly, while they had relatively more leeway in their romantic pursuits, these relationships were still tethered by economic pressures. Decisions of the heart were often interlaced with the pragmatic concerns of livestock and harvests, rather than whispers of sweet nothings. In this world, glancing across a crowded market could be as forbidden and thrilling as a clandestine rendezvous might be today. In the grand halls of medieval castles and the humble lanes of peasant villages, the concept of marriage wasn't a private endeavour, but an elaborate social and political transaction. For the nobility, the stakes were high. Marriages were strategic manoeuvres designed to secure land, titles, and alliances. Betrothals were often arranged long before the individuals involved were old enough to grasp what these commitments entailed. Children as young as 7 or 8 might find themselves promised to someone they'd never met, all in the name of preserving dynastic lineage and fortifying political ties. The noble marriage market was a complex, often ruthless enterprise. Families meticulously negotiated dowries, and alliances were inked like treaties of old, with estates changing hands as readily as wedding vows. The bride and groom were pawns on a broader chessboard, moved by parents and advisors who sought to strengthen familial power and prestige at any cost. Love, if it existed, was auxiliary and unforeseen consequence in the playing of the grand game. Meanwhile, for the peasantry, although slightly more lenity existed, the economic considerations in forming matrimonial bonds remained significant. Marriage, while not laden with the overt political overtones found in noble circles, still revolved around survival and practicality. Families would often barter livestock and produce, weighing the matrimonial prospects heavily on the scales of economic benefit. A good match for a peasant might involve the promise of cornfields and cattle, and the occasional warmth of affection was but a hopeful bonus. In this restricted emotional landscape, where social stability was prized above personal happiness, true romantic feelings were often relegated to the sphere of rebellion. Glancing across the market or writing secret poems could be risky acts of defiance, intimate gestures that pushed against societal restraints. The very structure of medieval society, with its rigid hierarchy and emphasis on duty, dictated that the heart should take second place to the head. Further complicating the dynamics of romance were the chivalrous codes governing knights and their interactions with ladies of the court. Courtly love blossomed amidst the chivalric ethos, offering an outlet for emotional expression in a socially acceptable manner. It was here, within the pages of meticulously crafted love letters and the scented depths of exchanged gloves, that an otherwise stifled yearning could tentatively breathe. Amidst the backdrop of castles and courtly intrigue, the elaborate dance of courtly love unfolded most dramatically. This ritual, characterized by romantic gestures and lofty expression, was inextricably linked to the chivalric codes that governed knights' unique blend of gallantry and constrained passion. A knight might dedicate his victories and take part in tournaments in honor of a lady, often one who was married, marking courtly love as an intricately designed outlet for those whose true affections would be deemed inappropriate or impractical under societal norms. At the heart of these traditions lay a socially tolerated yet emotionally charged form of interaction, where professed love was more about the poetry than the consummation. It was not uncommon for ladies to send knights into perilous quests with a turquina ribbon, a glove serving as both a blessing and a reminder of a silent vow. This poetic and sublimated form of admiration was as much a part of knighthood as the sword and shield they carried. Communication in the Middle Ages was laden with symbolism and veiled messages. A secret glance could carry immense weight when open declarations of love were frowned upon. Lovers exchanged tokens and trinkets, a silent language understood only by those who originated it. Encounters were often brief and chaperoned, requiring layers of plausible deniability to prevent scandal. The social structures ensured that any public affection risked becoming a political tool, an explosive secret that could threaten reputations and alliances alike. Medieval romance, however, was not left completely devoid of hope and ingenuity. With love under ever-watchful eyes, those yearning for connection found subtle means to outwit the rigid frameworks. Stealth and creativity flourished, particularly among those eager to defy the oppressive norms. Secret letters crafted in coded prose, and the hushed planning of festivals offered rare chances for intimate expression. Through clever ruses and witty poetry, the language of love persisted, hidden, yet enduring the trials of time. Chaperones played a pivotal role in maintaining decorum, acting both as protectors of virtue and enforcers of social propriety. Their omnipresence imparted a tense background to any romantic endeavour, ensuring that true emotions were veiled beneath layers of societal expectation. In the realm of courtly surveillance, chaperones were both guardians and jailers, ever vigilant in their duty to uphold societal propriety. These figures, often maternal relatives or trusted servants, were essential to every rendezvous, ensuring that any meeting between potential suitors remained firmly within the bounds of decency. The constant presence of chaperones added an amusing layer of tension to romantic liaisons, turning even the most innocuous glance or whispered word into a daring act of rebellion. Yet, where there were rules, there were also ingenious ways around them. Lovers adopted discreet methods to communicate and meet without drawing undue attention. Medieval society had a rich tapestry of covert communication, with lovers using everything from coded messages to clandestine signals. The exchange of objects, a glove, a ribbon, or even a flower became laden with meaning, serving as tokens that spoke louder than words in a world where discretion was the highest virtue. Each item had to pass through the keen eyes of the ever-watchful chaperone, driving couples to new heights of creativity in their quest to cement their secret bonds. Innovative methods of defiance took many forms. Lovers would often draft cryptic poems, weaving hidden messages into their verses with an artful finesse that only the intended recipient could truly decipher. These missives were sometimes traded in the bustling anonymity of public markets, where the throng of people provided convenient cover. Other times, they were slipped through intermediaries, entrusted with keeping the secret safe from prying eyes. Amid the vigilant eyes of society, festivals and public celebrations offered rare opportunities to slip out of sight, if only for a moment. Amidst the noise and colour, couples could melt into the crowd, finding fleeting pockets of privacy where their whispered confessions might go unheard by the world, a world that refused to let love run its natural course. Within these stolen glances and fleeting touches, lay a defiant assertion of humanity, a fervent cry for connection in a time and place where such dreams were often buried beneath layers of duty and decorum. Even the most formidable restrictions could not fully extinguish the flame of romantic desire. The human spirit, relentless in its pursuit of connection, found ways to endure and outwit its constraints. In the midst of this intricate dance of social constraints and personal desires, the Middle Ages unravelled a complex tableau of chivalric allure and hidden passions. It was a time when the knightly ethos infused even the most clandestine interactions with an aura of dignity and honour. For those caught in the grip of passion, the stakes were always high. Society's watchful gaze was ever present, demanding subterfuge in love and punishment in indiscretion. Yet, the allure of forbidden love captivated the imaginations of many, transcending class and status. Noble women, often constrained by political marriages, found a unique sense of agency in the intrigue of courtly love. In the secrecy of their chambers or the shadow of church aisles, these women, through their own cunning, cultivated webs of communication with the knights who admired them from afar, crafted letters laden with metaphors could transform into heartfelt exchanges, each line a delicate dance around the boundaries of propriety. Knights, encamped in the romantic traditions of their code, pursued these secret courtships with an eagerness that elevated their deeds to legendary proportions. Songs and sonnets woven with the elegance of the time circled these tales, describing feats of valour inspired by the silent encouragement of a lady's favour. Each whispered secret or coded poem added layers to their romantic mythology, embedding their stories within the cultural fabric of the times. Such were the stakes of courtly love that its practitioners often found themselves walking a perilous tightrope. While society indulged in the fantasy, it also held the power to crush any step out of line. The court of opinion could cast ostracism or even render judgments as severe as exile. Thus, lovers navigated this treacherous landscape with delicacy, their efforts a testament to the enduring power of the human heart. However, in times of festivals or religious celebrations, even the stringent rules of decorum could bend. Fairs and pilgrimages provided windows of opportunity, where the excited throngs created environments ripe for mischief and romance. Costumed balls and jousting tournaments gave cover for brief, meaningful, encounter-stempering escape from the rigid frameworks of everyday life. Yet, over all these possibilities hung the ever-present shadow of risk. For despite their ingenuity and resourcefulness, couples had to remain vigilant, lest a misstep lead to ruin rather than romance. In a world where direct communication could invite scandal, medieval lovers turned to tokens and symbolic gestures, weaving a rich tapestry of meaning into everyday objects. A simple glove, often exchanged in the cloak of night or the bustling ambience of a market, could transform into a profound message of devotion. These tokens became silent ambassadors of affection, safeguarding secrets in their inconspicuous appearance. The giving of ribbons, a favoured token, was subtly packed with significance. Ribbon colours and placement spoke volumes. A red ribbon, plucked from a maiden's hair and tied around a knight's arm before battle, conveyed her wishes for his safe return. Such gestures, while profuse with romantic expression, also served as a public display of connection, a calculated risk, fraught with implications. The covert language of token exchange extended beyond mere items. Flowers bore their own secrets. A delicately placed violet might symbolize fidelity, while an innocent daisy could encapsulate youthful innocence and hope. Lovers encrypted messages through these flora, speaking a language that transcended the spoken word, tapping into a shared understanding that underscored their illicit entanglement. This subtle ballet of communication necessitated cunning and finesse. Couched in the emblematic and symbolic tokens held encoded communications that, to the unknowing eye, seemed innocent. Yet, for those versed in their hidden meanings, they were gateways to hearts, exchanges steeped in longing typically forbidden by societal diktats. Nevertheless, this system of token-based dialogue held inherent dangers. Misplaced symbols or unreturned tokens posed significant risks, inviting gossip and potential disgrace upon receiving households. The need for plausible deniability was paramount, enabling lovers to affirm their intentions without exposing themselves to jeopardy. Even amidst these risks, the allure of connection prevailed, a testament to the timeless human yearning for intimacy and understanding. The ability to share one's heart, even through the veiled language of a trinket or blossom, sparkled with hope, enticing couples to risk reputation for the fleeting yet precious joy of shared sentiment. As we unravel the nuanced channels of medieval romantic communication, we edge closer to uncovering the shadows hiding revolutionary defiance through emergent chaperone surveillance tactics. Chaperones. Love under surveillance. In the theatre of medieval romance, where tokens and indirect exchanges whispered tales of forbidden affection, another layer of complexity loomed large: the omnipresent shadow of the chaperone. These guardians of propriety, often a family member or trusted servant, ensured that burgeoning romances remained within the rigid confines of societal norms. Under their watchful gaze, acts of love required the dexterity of a practiced illusionist. For noble families, chaperones functioned like sentinels, tasked with preserving the family's honor and ensuring that marriages remained suitable alliances. Their presence was non-negotiable in court receptions, dances, and even during social visits. An aspiring knight wishing to court a lady had to navigate these encounters with cleverness, employing elaborate coded glances or practiced deference, all while maintaining an impeccable air of decorum. Among the peasantry, where economic considerations took precedence over political ambitions, the chaperone's role was less about societal prestige and more about practical implications. Here, elder siblings or wise neighbours often fulfilled the chaperone's duties, ensuring that courtships progressed smoothly toward the goal of mutual benefit or family consolidation. Even at festivals where echoes of laughter mingled with music, their watchful eyes were hard to elude. Despite such vigilant presence, love found a way to blossom in the scarce moments of privacy-stolen glances beneath the boughs of a maypole or whispered words behind a church pillar. Lovers employed gestures and symbols to communicate in ways that eluded prying eyes, yet spoke volumes to open hearts. Chaperones, in their role as observers, often found themselves sworn to silence for a fee or a favour. Some, invested in the couple's happiness, offered their complicity with a twinkle of knowing eyes, subtly encouraging the pursuit of true affection despite contracts and obligations. Others, however, were uncompromising, embodying societal constraints. Thus, the lover's world was one of delicate dance, weaving through a tapestry of societal expectation, familial duty, and hopeful yearning. As shrouds of dusk fell over milling marketplaces and castle courts, romance forged clandestine pathways, each encounter tinged with the dual thrill and peril of secrecy. The balance between obedience and defiance hung like a finely tuned scale, ready to tip at the slightest provocation. Methods of quiet defiance. Despite the omnipresent shadow cast by chaperones and societal edicts, the medieval heart found ingenious ways to express soul-stirring defiance. In this era of stringent conventions, love, paradoxically, thrived on its limitations, nourishing itself on ingenuity and wit. The language of courtship, hidden behind veils of propriety, whispered its truths through art, concealed rendezvous, and a surprising playfulness masked as decorum. Secret letters, clandestine messengers to the heart, emerged as a beacon of private connection. Thick parchment and ink became carriers, subverting the power dynamics of love, allowing impassioned words to breach walls thicker than stone. Lovers disguised their correspondence under the guise of harmless missives about familial or commercial affairs. Within these coded letters, the clandestine romance lived, bursting forth in phrases charged with longing, carefully crafted to evade discovery, yet clear as day to those who held the key. Festivals and fairs, those vibrant whirlwinds of colour and laughter, offered another refuge for those eager to defy the norm. Amid the din of music and dance, fleeting moments spun gold for those with eyes keen enough to catch them. Here, lovers could laugh under the guise of communal celebration, weaving through the crowds, using the cover of festivity to spin their own quiet narratives. A brief touch as a lover passed through a crowded terrace, a shared smile hidden within the very public display of merrimenthies, became acts of muted rebellion. Witty poetry, crafted with dexterity and arch humour, further solidified this subversive tradition. In these rhymes and verses, Passion was dressed in double entendre, challenging the reader's ability to decode its true meaning. These verses travelled as oral traditions, carried by minstrels and bards, becoming not only declarations of sentiment, but cultural artifacts of defiance against an imposing status quo. The courtship dance became a delicate juggle between societal observation and personal authenticity. Every word, every gesture, was steeped in layers of meaning. Say too much and invite scandal. Say too little and risk passing by a once-in-a-lifetime connection. The astute pair knew how to navigate this labyrinth their guide, the earnest desire for a love that could withstand, even thrive, under such constraints. Yet, even within this carefully performed play of rebellion, tenderness thrived. As these acts of quiet defiance played out against the rigid tapestry of medieval society, one question emerged. How did these covert courtships affect the very fabric of love and alliances during the Middle Ages? Did these secret exchanges influence the eventual outcome of the arranged unions they often undermined? For many, these hidden gestures not only provided emotional release, but forged bonds resilient enough to subtly shift the balances of their social spheres. In a world where honour and family stood paramount, such emotional connections had the potential to ripple through the very foundations of societal structure. The clandestine lovers, experts in this concealed art, knew this risk intimately. In the secrecy of allegorical poetry or the hidden depths of love letters, a revolution simmered quietly. Revolution of the heart, capable of challenging the norms prescribed by birth and status. Within noble courts, secret alliances whispered of power, while, among peasants, a discreet union might ensure a successful harvest or a profitable trade. Courtiers who mastered this delicate subversion could emerge as influential players' murmured mentions shared at banquet tables, alliances cemented under veils of secrecy late into the candle-lit nights. The consequences, however, were as unpredictable as they were potent. Some finds these whispered romances strengthened their public unions, adding a foundation of genuine affection that lent truth to their arranged facades. For others, the secrets posed a formidable threat. Each hidden smile or knowing glance, a crack in the walls of acceptable decorum. Exposed, these star-crossed passions could erupt, burning paths through reputations and establishing legends long remembered beyond the confines of their epoch. And yet, with each letter slipped into a pocket, with every met glance across a crowded room, medieval lovers defied a world intent on shaping them. They whispered their truth in verses buried beneath metaphors or danced around truths shielded in public merriment. They sought neither conquest nor open rebellion, but rather a fleeting piece of an authentic experience within the confines that bound them. As the scented winds of autumn bears tales of harvests and festivities, lovers looked towards the horizon. Their hearts thumped with the rhythm of both trepidation and hope, wondering what lay ahead in their dance of shadows and sunlight. As the dance of shadows and sunlight unfolded, these medieval lovers found themselves continuously at the mercy of time and circumstance. Just as their hearts twisted with the thrill of stolen moments, they equally faced the looming uncertainty of what each new day might bring. Under the looming shadow of duty and destiny, their stories were as ephemeral as the morning mist, hinting at permanence, yet inevitably fading against the glare of societal duty. A fresh page unravelled in this romantic epic, with the cyclical nature of medieval life ever-changing seasons, dictating the rhythm of existence. As winter prepared to grace the lands with its austere beauty, castles became sanctuaries, their walls echoing with both whispered confidences and the rattling resonance of obligation. Here, in these warm recesses, courtly love tales found new meaning amid the flickering shadows cast by hearth fires. The art of seduction transformed within these stone confines. Games of chess served as metaphors for the intricate maneuvers of courtship. Knight's bold advance mirrored the suitor's hopeful approach. Meanwhile, the queen's subtle side glance captured the essence of silent pacts, whispered beneath the voracious gaze of torches. Thus, under the guise of intellectual gamesmanship, emotions unfurled in private chambers away from prying eyes. Yet, while these noble halls swelled with intrigue and unsanctioned yearnings, the countryside braced for the practical demands of survival. For the common folk, Winter's chill whispered urgency a need to harvest affection, much like the field's bounty before the frost claimed both. Here, private alliances often serve dual purposes. Love intertwined with prudent necessity. Among the snug cottages, where villagers huddled together through the longest nights, tales of silent compacts exchanged for a mere loaf echoed with yearning and understanding. Here, with the world sheltered beneath a white shroud, unsung romances blossomed in shared glances across communal tables laden with rustic fare. And as the season tightened its grip, the fabric of these clandestine arrangements, woven with the silken threads of defiance, flickered livid and potent. Their connections, their whispered promises, existed in a delicate balance, nestled between the raw resilience of peasantry and the gilded intrigue of nobility. But the tangled weave of affection and allegiance was on the verge of facing its greatest test. As winter's embrace tightened around the medieval world, the scheme of affection and allegiance approached its most testing hour. By the hearth, where nobles and peasants alike exchanged stories and warmth, an unforeseen tremor threatened this landscape of secret romances and strategic alliances. The danger lurked not within leagues of an invading force or the icy touch of hunger, but rather in the form of rumours whispers spiralling through communities like gusts of the fiercest winter storm. These murmurs, potent as they were intangible, had the potential to unravel the intricate web of shadowed courtships that had thrived under the careful watch of the more observant. Among the nobility, these whispers took on lives of their own, wrapping themselves around challenges in court and reverberating through the hierarchical echelons. A misplaced letter or a revealing glance could shift the political tapestry dramatically, birthing feuds where there had been none. Thus, the once safe and romantic trysts transformed into precarious dances upon the thin ice of decorum, threatening to plunge courtly lovers into the frigid depths of scandal. Meanwhile, in rural domains, the same tendrils of rumour wound through the communal fabrics, seeking to ensnare peasant hearts in binding threads of suspicion. In tight-knit villages, where privacy claimed a premium, the farmhouse corners turned into battlegrounds where the purity of a glance could be scrutinised like a harvest worth. Here, jealousy and loyalty waged silent battles, questioning whether the furtive affection of lingering gazes could withstand the oppressing chill of doubt. Yet, across the backdrop of these scenes, one common truth persisted: the unyielding resilience of love. Driven by hearts that defied not only the frost, but the very rules that threatened their binding, love persisted. A quiet strength lingered amidst the rampant uncertainties, reminding them that to seek genuine connection was an act of rebellion more courageous than any crafted combat strategy or alliance treaty. For those undervalued by birth or status, this was an era-defying revelation, an understanding that positioned acts of kindness and passion as catalysts for change. No matter how pervasive the rumours or how rigid the societal constraints, love retained its potency as an unfaltering torch against the coldest winds. And yet, as winter imperceptibly inched towards spring, lovers contemplated what their futures held. As spring's tentative fingers began to thaw the medieval landscape, rejuvenating the land and its people, a new optimism stirred in the hearts of those entwined in the complicated dance of affection and power. However, amid this season of potential renewal, an unforeseen force emerged to challenge the whispers of love and the equilibrium of fate of the arrival of a mysterious stranger in the court, whose presence threatened to upend the delicate balance maintained by both nobles and peasants alike. This enigmatic arrival, cloaked in rumours and intrigue, had connections that appeared obscure yet influential, possessing a charisma that drew the attention of both high-born and low. With a demeanour as alluring as it was inscrutable, they moved with confidence through the social strata, a harbinger of change and perhaps disruption. Quickly, tales of their audacious charm and piercing insight became the focal point of hushed conversations in shadowed corridors and vibrant market squares. For the nobility, this stranger represented a dual-edged blade both, a source of potential alliances and a harbinger of unforeseeable shifts in power. The once stable corridors of power felt the tremors of ambition and distrust as alliances were scrutinized under newly cautious eyes. Every word exchanged, and every shared glance was pregnant with more meaning than before, as the court navigated the precarious dance of politics with heightened fervour. In rural hamlets, meanwhile, the stranger's presence sparked curiosity and speculation, whispering possibility into lives accustomed to simplicity and survival. Peasant communities, with their tightly woven traditions of loyalty and bonds, buzzed with stories of this newcomer whose very existence seemed a breach of the familiar. Here, amidst fields awakening with fresh life, the seeds sown were not only of spring crops, but of dreams awakened by the unknown, the possibility of a rupture in the routine, where love might flourish in unexpected ways. Amidst the emerging flowers of spring, these communities recognized a choice solidified by this stranger's arrival: to yield to the murmurs of fear or embrace the adventure of the heart, awakened by their lingering presence. It was a moment of introspection and resolve, where clandestine affection might transcend its hidden confines and step boldly into the light. Yet, as the court and countryside alike found themselves on the brink of transformation, a subtle apprehension tailed the sense of renewal. Amid the hallways and hedgerows of the medieval world, life unfolded like an intricate tapestry thread, delicately weaving the stories of knights and peasants, love and power. Yet, with the advent of the mysterious outsider, a new pattern threatened to redefine these carefully stitched narratives. Whispered tales of this enigmatic figure rippled through the cobblestone streets and manor halls, echoing the silent question: who are they truly, and what do they seek? For Lady Eleanor, poised at the heart of the court, the disruption arrived as both a danger and a spark of hope. Bound by the duties of her station and the expectations of courtly decorum, each day was a measured sequence of alliances and appearances. However, the stranger's keen gaze and cryptic demeanour stirred something dormant within Hera, craving for a destiny untethered from dutiful inevitabilities. In the dappled shadows of the manor gardens, Eleanor found herself inexplicably drawn to the outsider's presence. It was in the depth of their whispered conversations, punctuated by the rustle of leaves and the scent of early blossoms, that she encountered a reflection of her own unvoiced desires. Each meeting wove a deeper connection, a tapestry of words and glances that suggested unspoken promises and concealed truths. Meanwhile, in the far-flung villages, Thomas the blacksmith forged tales alongside his steel, his life marked by the tangible weight of duty rather than flights of courtly intrigue. He pondered the rumours that infused his community. The prospect of change, while unsettling, carried within it the allure of unmet possibility zones that might stretch beyond the boundaries of his shaded forge. The stranger's presence in the village energized Thomas, intertwining with a personal thread of longing for something beyond rustic predictability. He witnessed careless exchanges between the visiting figure and another tentative moments that ignited in him both a surge of rivalry and a flicker of self-awareness, challenging the notion of what love might dare to achieve. In both court and village, the narrative unfurled a masterful dance between cautious calculation and yearning spontaneity. And yet, as the spectre of impending change loomed over this fragile dance, neither Eleanor nor Thomas could shake the silent apprehension that shadowed their hopes. The stories whispered through hedgerows and alleys seemed to signal a twist uncharted, a test of resolve for lives spun tightly into tradition and ambition. The court was abuzz with the intrigue that always seemed to accompany the mysterious stranger's every move. Within this genteel chaos, Lady Eleanor glided through her duties, her mind ensnared by the fleeting moments shared under the canopy of stars. The words exchanged with the enigmatic outsider lingered, awakening a duality within her that was both terrifying and exhilarating. Society had woven a cloak of expectations tightly around her shoulders, yet the threads of those old obligations began to fray, one secret meeting at a time. Despite the quiet resolve she carried, Eleanor knew the gravity of her choices. In a world where every step was scrutinized and where deviation from the norm could spell disaster, she balanced precariously on a tightrope strung between duty and desire. As whispers of her wanderings permeated through the corridors, a new thread of danger unfurled on that demanded sacrifice for the hope promised in a fleeting glance. In the village, days blended into one another as they always had, though the air was undeniably charged with the prospect of something new. Thomas the blacksmith worked under the steady rhythm of hammer and anvil, each clink resonating with questions of the heart. Somewhere at the core of his laborious day, The image of the stranger fueled a deep, quiet rebellion within. His confidant was the forge. Its heat, the embodiment of his internal turmoil, where doubts were tempered into the steel of resolve. Every so often, Thomas caught glimpses of the stranger's interactions from afar, noting the curious ways they shifted the air around them, drawing villagers like moths to a flame. There was something that felt precarious, yet undeniably illuminating about their presence, much like the spark that first ignited his forge each morning. Amidst the mundane, the foreign figure brought the promise of transformation. As above in the court, alliances hung in the delicate balance of ambition and affection. Below in the village, common souls pondered their destinies anew. The mysterious figure, unburdened by allegiance to any one story, wandered with a seeming freedom that could light the path for those brave enough to follow. Yet, as Eleanor prepared for another clandestine meeting, and Thomas resolved to steal an opportunity for revelation, the winds of change chilled the air. News from the capital reached the quiet outskirts an announcement that promised to turn the social dance into a thrilling, dizzying waltz. The air in the court was taut with anticipation. Whispers of the announcement buzzed like restless bees through the corridors, each noble face reflecting a mix of excitement and unease. Lady Eleanor moved with practiced grace through the throng, her thoughts never far from her most recent clandestine conversation beneath the starlit canopy. The enigmatic stranger had spoken of truths barely uttered, a world unseen within the conventional boundaries of her existence. And now, with this impending change emanating from the capital, Eleanor felt the pull of destiny stronger than ever. The announcement was to be made at twilight, in the grand hall where vaulted ceilings echoed with histories of power and privilege. Nobles gathered, their gowns and tunics pooling like vivid streams against the stone floors. Eyes fixed on the dais where the messenger stood. Eleanor occupied her place among the gathered, the weight of 1,000 possibilities pressing heavily upon her heart. Could it be that the winds of change carried more than whispers this time? Could it promise action? In the village, the day unfolded with its usual hum of understated resilience, yet an undercurrent of expectancy mirrored the atmosphere of the court above. Thomas the blacksmith leaned against the doorframe of his forge, watching as villagers drifted towards the tavern, the makeshift heart of communal life. Here was where news from lands beyond their field of view would first land, stirred from the lips of travellers and traders like mythical tales. Thomas, as if called by an unseen force, followed the stream of villagers, a silent eagerness in his step. Inside the dim warmth of the tavern, familiar faces nodded in greeting, yet eyes remained glued to the stranger who stood by the hearth. Their presence, an embodiment of the wider world, the unknown. The anticipation was palpable, each heartbeat synchronized to the unspoken hope that change would soon stretch its wings and ascend above their everyday horizon. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through both court and village, the moment of proclamation arrived. A herald, clad in the finery befitting his role, cleared his throat with the weight of gravitas necessary for such news. Eleanor watched him intently, every sense attuned to the shaping of her future. Thomas found himself at the heart of the gathered crowd, caught between the personas of a participant and observer. The herald's voice cut through the murmurs of the gathering, each word a stone dropped into the still waters of expectation. "By order of the king," he began, "a grand tournament shall be held within the fortnight, celebrating our prosperous times and fortifying bonds with neighbouring realms." The announcement hung like incense in the air, its meaning diffused into layered implications. In the court, nobles exchanged glances, a flurry of silent judgments and calculations taking shape. A tournament was not merely a display of martial prowess and chivalrous bravado. It was a chessboard upon which power could dance, a stage where alliances could be forged or shattered under the guise of revelry. For Lady Eleanor, the news struck a discordant chord within her. The festival's festivities promising more than merriment, they promised an upheaval in which her own role would be inevitably cast in shadows or light. The prospect of the tournament was no less seismic for the village below, where the whispers and cheers ricocheted off the tavern walls. Thomas felt the familiar weight of opportunity framing his shoulders. A tournament was an occasion where peasants could mingle, however briefly, with the nobility often spoken of as distant deities. But more than that, it meant the stranger's presence in his world would soon play out, not in hushed conversations and stolen glances, but on a grander scale, where intent and identity might be revealed under the sun's unwavering eye. As twilight deepened, a cacophony of thoughts filled both Eleanor's and Thomas's minds, their paths intertwined yet distinct. Eleanor, beneath her facade of composure, nurtured a burgeoning hope that the tournament could be a stage for defiance. Her heart, now a tautly drawn bowstring, whispered of rebellion and the courage to mould her destiny beyond the restrictive corset of imposed obligations. Thomas, standing in the midst of villagers now animated with excited speculation, considered the forge a fresh knot just as the crucible of his livelihood, but as the very furnace from which dreams might be wrought. If the stranger held a key to the locked doors of their fates, then surely the tournament was the gateway through which they might all step bravely into new chapters of their own making. As the village lights began to flicker in welcome of the encroaching night, Eleanor turned away from the crowd, her fingers brushing against the ribbon from her last clandestine meeting. The ribbon felt like a silken tether to a world of possibilities, each thread woven with promises whispered beneath secretive moons. Eleanor stood on the precipice of change, her resolve solidified by the soft flutter of fabric against her palm. As she pulled the ribbon closer, its meaning burrowed deeper into her heart, reminder that, despite the confines of courtly expectations, her spirit yearned for something truer than calculated alliances and faceless marriages. Meanwhile, in the village, Thomas returned to his forge with new determination ignited in his chest. The tournament was more than a spectacle. It was an arena where destinies could be rewritten with the stroke of a sword or the charm of a smile. To him, the forge was no longer just a workshop, it was a sanctuary and a forge of hope, crafting not only metal, but dreams. The presence of the enigmatic visitor among them was a spark that could light the pathways towards unforeseen futures. The days leading up to the tournament were abuzz with preparation and anticipation. In the court, a palpable tension simmered beneath the surface of decorum. Noble women whispered excitedly about gallant displays of chivalry, while men exchanged knowing glances on strategies as if the tournament were a battlefield, not entertainment. Eleanor, navigating this sea of silk and armour, found herself drawn to the whispered hints of rebellion, each conversation a covert mission to align herself with others who saw beyond the gilded surface. In the village, the tavern hummed with expectation, villagers bustling about in shared excitement. For Thomas, each day at the forge was a step closer to a stage that extended beyond fire-warmed anvils. He crafted a piece of armour, its gleaming surface reflecting ambitions yet unspoken, dreams yet attained. Meanwhile, his thoughts strayed to the stranger, whose quiet presence seemed to promise that the tournament would be more than a mere contest of skill and show of wealth. As the appointed day arrived, the air was electric, with possibility both in the court and the village. Roads once empty lined with curious onlookers, the hum of excitement a shared current. Thomas stood at the edge of the gathered crowd, his eyes scanning the throng for familiar and unfamiliar faces alike. Eleanor, within the ornate walls, felt the thrill of potential pulsing with each beat of her heart. Each step she took a dance on the precipice of rebellion or conformity. The dawn of the tournament day was painted in shades of dawn's early blush, and the cold blue of pre-dawn shadows. Eleanor rose early, her heart both a drum and a dove in her chest. The castle was alive with the sounds of preparation psalmer clinking, horses stamping impatiently, and the hum of anticipation weaving through the air like an invisible thread, binding everyone to the moment. Each movement felt rehearsed, as if every soul knew the weight of the day's significance, even if they couldn't yet see its unfolding tapestry. She dressed with care, each piece of her attire a calculated symbol of the rebellion tucked beneath her skin. The ribbon, now sacred through its whispered promises, was woven into her braid a subtle defiance that spoke volumes to those with keen eyes and open hearts. As she descended into the courtyard, the reality of her life, ruled by others' expectations, and desires flooded over her again like a persistent tide. Yet beneath this, a new hope bubbled, fed by the thrill of what the tournament might reveal. In the village, the streets buzzed with eager footsteps and jubilant cries of excitement. Thomas stood at the centre of it all, his thoughts a steady storm of what could be, what he might discover today. The tournament grounds had transformed into a colourful sea of pennants and tents, the air filled with the scent of roasting meats and sweet pastries. Before him, the arena seemed a threshold, not merely to contests of strength and valour, but to the very heart of destiny itself. The mysterious visitor's presence, barely felt yet profoundly significant, lingered just at the edge of his awareness, a lighthouse guiding him toward a shore of unknown promise. Spectators gathered in vibrant clusters, their laughter and bets swirling in an intricate dance of social theatre. Nobles took their places in elevated platforms, their conversations a blend of calculated politics and genuine curiosity. As Eleanor joined the ranks of her peers, she could feel the speculative gazes of those around her, each wondering but not daring to voice their deepest thoughts. In the arena below, knights and competitors paraded in their finery, each heralded by trumpets that punctuated the eager chatter with notes of triumph and challenge. With the first signal, the day's contest began, heralding not only physical clashes, but the subtle battles of wit and intention that unfolded off the field. The clamour of the tournament surged like a living beast, its fervour washing over Eleanor and the assembled nobility in waves of sound and spectacle. Amidst the dazzling pageantry, she watched as the knights manoeuvred their steeds with practised ease, each bout a ballet of strength and strategy. The air crackled with excitement, a tapestry woven from the threads of clashing steel and the vibrant cheers of the crowd. For Eleanor, the tournament was more than a mere display of martial prowess. It was a theatre in which her own ambitions and dreams played a hidden role. With every victory or defeat, she felt the weight of possibilities pressing against her heart, knowledge of what change might spring from such a public stage. Her gaze drifted to the ribbon woven through her braid, an ever-present emblem of the resistance coursing through her veins. As the tournament unfolded, the mysterious visitor, a figure shrouded in intrigue, remained an ominous presence at its periphery. Though few could pin their interest upon him, Thomas found his eyes drawn towards this enigmatic stranger, his curiosity as relentless as the clang of swords. Here, in the midst of this grand spectacle, the invisible threads of fate seemed to tighten around him, urging him towards action or revelation. The opening contests set a ferocious pace, noble and commoner alike swept up in the fervour. Tensions, both spoken and unspoken, hung heavily in the air, each clash of swords a metaphor for greater struggles beyond the arena's bounds. Eleanor could sense the unease within some of her peers, those who, like her, entertained thoughts and desires outside the sanctioned norms. Yet, amidst the throng, their shared glances spoke volumes. In the heart of the village, the common folk embraced the day's festivities with unbridled energy. Thomas stood among them, his heart a mirror to the chaos and joy that swirled around him. He surveyed the knights with a critical eye, assessing them not simply for skill but for a kindred spirit, a shared yearning for something deeper than mere victory. It was in this searching that he felt his thoughts brush again against the stranger's presence, a silent promise that something significant was yet to unfold. The tournament's thrill elevated as the midday sun climbed higher, its warmth amplifying the pulse of expectation. The jousts intensified, the ground trembling beneath the thunder of hooves, while overhead, the pennants danced in the breeze. As the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the bustling tournament grounds, the atmosphere crackled with the anticipation of the final events. The crescendo of cheers and the clash of armoured knights grew more fervent, drawing Eleanor's focus to the arena's heart, where destiny seemed to be invoking an epic reckoning. With every clang of steel that resonated, she felt her grip on a future of choice and freedom tighten, like the delicate ribbon woven into her braid. Hidden beneath the spectacle's vibrant facade was the burgeoning tension of whispered alliances and subtle defiance. Eleanor's gaze darted toward Thomas, a figure in the colourful throng whose quiet intensity set him apart. She recognized in him a core of determination, a reflection mirroring her own clandestine hopes. Though separated by status, their shared spirit cast an invisible bridge of understanding over the social chasm. Eleanor silently vowed that this day, this tournament, would be more than just another fluttering page of history. It would forge a new narrative, one where personal desires began to crack the stone facade of tradition. Meanwhile, Thomas stood firm amidst the roaring crowd, the world around him swirling in an intoxicating mixture of dust, sunlight, and human excitement. His eyes, ever attentive, caught sight of the mysterious visitor, a shadow among the brightening evening, whose presence seemed less an intrusion and more a purpose-laden harbinger. This figure's air of quiet authority, unfazed by the bluster and bravado surrounding him-promised revelations, like an arrow not yet loosed from its bow. In this well of anticipation, contests of skill began their inexorable climb towards the day's ultimate trial for tournament's final joust. As knights paraded for the crowd's favour, Eleanor felt a deeper pulse beneath the surface pageantry, sensing that true battles were being fought in the flickering glances and covert smiles exchanged among the audience. For each pair of eyes that lingered on the arena's majestic choreography, a mind was privately daring to dream. Eleanor's fingers curled into fists, the smooth touch of the ribbon in her hair providing solace, a whisper of connection across the distance to Thomas. Here, amidst the grandeur and tradition imprisoning each noble heart, she felt the undeniable tug of change-a rebellion smouldering just below the surface. As the fiery orb of the sun sank further, painting the sky with hues of amber and indigo, the tournament reached the edge of climax, the final joust. The din of the crowd crescendoed, a tempest of voices thrumming through the air as knights clad in glinting armour prepared to charge. Eleanor stood poised at the edge of her seat, her heart drumming a steady tattoo in her chest, an echo of the hooves that soon would thunder across the tilt-yard. The arena, now bathed in the golden glow of approaching twilight, was more than just a stage for displays of might. It had become a crucible where dreams dared to ignite. Eleanor's gaze swept over the scene, each detail etched into her memory. The tapestry of noble spectators, the vibrant banners flapping in the soft evening breeze, the electric undercurrent of expectation. It was in this moment that Eleanor noticed Thomas once again, standing at the periphery like a steady oak amidst the swirling tempest. His eyes were locked onto the mysterious visitor, a stranger with the guise of an enigma, whose intent seemed interwoven with the very fabric of the gathering. Thomas's intuition whispered of significance, drawing him into a silent promise of change that defied the shackles of convention. The air thickened with unspoken vows, complicit glances, and the weight of ancestral legacies threading their influence through every whispered word and silent decision. Eleanor felt a kind of kinship with the distant thunder of the horses, as if their restive spirits mirrored her own restrained rebellion. The vibrant ribbon woven in her hair fluttered in the brassiere, symbol of defiance, visible yet obscured by the guise of fashion. Then, with a sudden roar, the joust commenced. Knights launched into headlong charges, lances poised to pierce both armour and anticipation. Metal clashing upon metal filled the space with a symphony of conflict. Each blow resonating with more than just the thrill of combat. It was a statement, a challenge to the norms that sought to bind their very souls. As the bout unfolded, Eleanor's focus wavered between the competitors and the enigmatic figure, whose presence hovered with an almost spectral authority. She could sense the gravitational pull he exerted, not just on Thomas, but on the very course of the day itself. The crowd may have been engrossed by the display of strength and skill, but Eleanor perceived the deeper narrative, the germination of a new tale waiting for the right moment to bloom. As the last light of the sun surrendered to night, the torches lining the tournament grounds flickered to life, casting a warm, shimmering glow over the scene. The final joust lingered in the air like a reverberating chord, echoing in the collective heartbeats of all present. Eleanor's mind raced, torn between the spectacle and the unravelling mystery that surrounded Thomas and the enigmatic visitor. What secrets were they hiding, she wondered, and how might they alter the entrenched customs of their world? In the tilt-yard below, the defeated knight struggled to regain his footing, while the victor basked in the adulation of the crowd. Eleanor noticed the smiles exchanged between nobles, an intricate dance of silent approvals, and veiled intentions as alliances old and new coiled beneath the surface. Yet, her thoughts were drawn irresistibly back to the sidelines where Thomas and the stranger stood. The stranger, clad in understated elegance, bore an air of quiet authority that seemed to whisper of influence greater than his unassuming presence suggested. His eyes, sharp with intelligence, scanned the throng with precision, like a hawk surveying the land. It was clear to Eleanor that every glance, every movement, was deliberately a calculated act in a grand, unseen play. Thomas, too, seemed to have felt the shift, a subtle realignment of possibilities flickering in the space between them. His gaze met Eleanor's across the crowded stands, and in that moment, a silent promise spun between their shared glances, a vow of courage in the face of inevitability. The ribbon in her hair felt suddenly heavier, not merely an accessory but a beacon of her clandestine defiance and unspoken desires. As the crowd began to disperse, retreating into the starlit evening, Eleanor's senses remained heightened, her pulse a steady drumbeat of anticipation. The stranger, with a nod to Thomas, quietly exited the grounds, leaving behind an aura of expectation that clung to the cool evening air. There was no doubt that his presence held meaning, a catalyst awaiting its moment to unchain the future. Eleanor and Thomas remained amidst the ebbing throng, each drawn by the same invisible tether, caught within the web of secrets and aspirations surrounding them. The night sky stretched above, vast and infinite, promising that within its dark expanse lay answers to questions even Eleanor dared not voice.